Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Kamish Orr, and welcome back to something I like to call Stories from the Maelstrom, a recap of the day's games for this past week of real time. It was another short week in Baseball Maelstrom action. We start over in LA, where the Houston Hoots were facing the Los Angeles Dynamos. LA riding an 8-game winning streak, but as you can see from the headline, that all ended here. Sandy Koufax was looking to get his 8th win of the season, which would be no other pitcher has 8 wins so far. But he struggled in a couple of innings in this one. The second and the third inning, struggled early on, settled down a little later, but damage was already done by that point. He was facing off against Phil Niekro. There in the second inning, Koufax allowed a couple of runs. Richie Ashburn had an RBI single with 2 outs, and Arky Vaughn followed that with a triple to score Ashburn. That put 2 on the board. And then in the third, Gary Carter led off with a single. And Joe Morgan, there was an error on Joe Morgan there to put another guy on. And then Mike Schmidt hit a 2-run triple, scoring both Carter and Hank Aaron. And just 2 batters later, Roberto Clemente hit a 2-run homer. That put Houston up 6-0 at that point. They'd get another run in the 6th, RBI single from Gary Carter, so that put them up 7-0 at that point. Finally, LA would actually score against Niekro, but Niekro was pretty much cruising until the 6th inning, when he allowed a couple of solo home runs, one to Frank Robinson and one to Cristobal Torriente. He'd allow another couple of runs in the 7th, RBI singles, one from Frank Robinson again, and one from Joe Morgan, to make it 7-4, but that was as close as LA would get in this one. Lee Smith came in, picked up his 11th save for the Houston Hoots. Niekro gets the win. He allowed 4 earned runs on 7 hits. Only struck out 2. Koufax struck out 6 in his 7 innings of work, but allowed 11 hits, 6 earned runs. Despite that, his ERA only goes up to 2.41. He had the best ERA in the National League, and actually maybe all of the Maelstrom, I believe. But this one was a rare bad performance by Koufax. Houston wins this one. They improve to 17-21, and LA falls to 23-15. They were trying to gain on the St. Louis Wizards, and this won't help them do that at all, as they fall back half a game. Let's head over to Boston. We had a doubleheader. The game yesterday was called due to rain, and was rescheduled for today. They played a doubleheader. The Oakland Jacks facing the Boston Splinters at Fenway Park. First game of this 2-game series was Pedro Martinez facing off against Bert Blyleven. Pedro has one of the best ERAs in the league since he got moved into the starting rotation. He had started as a reliever, but Boston quickly moved him to the starting rotation to take advantage of his potentially great performances. And he's had a bit of spotty luck here and there. I should mention that in this season that Pedro Martinez was carded for, he was injured most of that season. And so he does, in order to account for that, I've had him need an extra few days rest in between starts. So that he isn't able to start every in the rotation like he normally would be. Anyway, all of that said, Boston got out in front in the 4th inning with an RBI. Actually a walk. Bert Blyleven walked 3 batters. He walked Cal Ripken Jr. to lead off the 4th. Carlton Fisk singled, and then Charlie Gehringer and Harmon Killebrew both walked. So Blyleven walked in a run there in the 4th. However, that would be the only run he would allow in his 8 innings of work. He did allow, he walked 7, so pretty crazy, and allowed 8 hits, but Only Boston was only able to get one of those runners to score against Blyleven. Meanwhile, Pedro, he took a 3-hitter, I believe, into the 8th inning, 3-hit shutout. He allowed a leadoff single to Rod Carew, another single there in the 3rd to Robin Yount, and a double to Joe DiMaggio in the 2nd. And those were the only 3 hits he allowed until the 8th inning. And here he was up 1-0 at that point. Mickey Cochran singled to lead off the inning. Reggie Jackson drew a walk. He did get Minnie Minoso to fly out, but then Nellie Fox drove in both runners with a double there in the 8th before Pedro was able to get out of the inning. So Pedro left the game down 2-1, despite only allowing 2 earned runs and 5 hits over his 8 innings. He left with a no decision here, and possibly, he was in line for the loss. But something funny happened in the 9th. Mariano Rivera came in to close things out and made quick work of Ricky Henderson and Tony Oliva on groundouts to start the 9th inning. But then Ted Williams was able to draw a walk, his 3rd walk of the game, by the way. And the next batter, Frank Robinson, took Mariano Rivera deep for the walk-off 2-run home run. And Boston wins this one 3-2. It's actually the 2nd blown save of the year for Mariano Rivera. As you can see by his ERA, he's had a couple of rough spots in there. And this was one of those. So Oakland, despite scoring late to get ahead in this one, falls to the Boston Splinters. They dropped to 16-20, and Boston improves to 20-16 in the first game of the doubleheader. Now we head to the second game of the doubleheader, and it's going to be another win by Boston late. This one, Mike Messina for the Jacks, facing off against Jim Palmer for the Boston Splinters. And once again, Oakland was the first to get out in front of this one and come out on top there in the early innings. Rod Carew hit a sac fly in the 3rd and an RBI single in the 4th to put Oakland up 2-0. And Boston would score 1 in the 5th on an RBI double from Ricky Henderson with 2 outs. Other interesting thing to note there in the 5th inning was Carlton Fisk injured himself running, trying to beat out the throw from the shortstop there. He was pulled out of the game. He's not going to miss any more time. Everything else came back fine, but he did have to come out of this one. So once again, Oakland was up 2-1, this time heading into the 7th inning. And Mike Messina allowed a leadoff double to Charlie Gehringer, struck out Harmon Killebrew, got Ricky Henderson to dribble one back to the pitcher, but then walked Tony Oliva and allowed Ted Williams a 2-run double to put Boston in front. Williams was 0 for 3 at that point. He does have a hitting streak going. I can't remember how many games, but he does have a hitting streak going. He had been 0 for 3 in this one up until that point. He usually has a few walks in there, but in this game he didn't walk. But that 2-run double there was enough to get Boston in the lead, 3-2. Raleigh Fingers came in to close out the 9th, and he pitched a 1-2-3 9th to collect his 4th save of the season. Not very many saves, but then Boston usually doesn't give him very many save opportunities either. They're usually way out in front or way behind, one of the two. Usually way out in front. So Boston takes the second game of the doubleheader, winning this one 3-2, another close game. Oakland drops to 16-21 as Boston improves to 21-16. And if we take a look here at the standings, we can see that those 2 wins pull Boston to within half a game of Detroit for the American League lead. Meanwhile, LA's loss drops them to 2 games behind the St. Louis Wizards. You can kind of see the upcoming games. Oakland will be facing off against Detroit in Detroit, St. Louis and LA facing off against one another there in the National League. That'll be an exciting series to watch. And New York will face off against Boston and Houston against Chicago. As always, you can head over to baseballmaelstrom.com to check out all the action, follow the stats, see the write-ups on each game as I play them. And as I said, check out the stats by hitting the stats page and follow the action that way. If you have any questions about the league, be sure to drop those down in the comments. As always, if you want to continue to follow this action, be sure to click the subscribe button so you don't miss anything. Consider clicking the like button on the video. That lets me know that you like this kind of content. I do plan when we get to the World Series eventually to play those games out and video those. Until that point, I've only just kind of been doing recaps. I know there are a lot of channels out there that do actual gameplay, but I've only been doing recaps. And but I do plan to play out the World Series when we get there. All that said, thank you so much for stopping by and watching. And until next time, have a great evening.